Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Show. We've got a special guest for you today, all the way live from Arizona. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show a comedian who started out as an award-winning director for 20 years. He quickly found success in radio and gained national recognition when he was featured on Sirius XM. He trained with several improv troupes before transitioning to stand-up comedy. He now performs at various comedy clubs, casinos, churches, and corporate events around the country. He's fresh off a Dry Bar comedy special recording in Provo, Utah. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, please welcome the very funny and talented Brian Kohatsu.
Thank you.
Brian.
Very nice. I like that. I like very fresh off. Like I have that Dry Bar smell on me still. Fresh I am off the plane. I think I might have a bag of peanuts too. So.
Oh yeah, man. I tell you, big time congrats to you. And hey, Michelle.
Hey, Michelle.
Michelle Van Duzen. You got to love Michelle Van Duzen. We had Michelle on earlier today.
Michelle, actually, and Michelle, thank you. One, for watching this, but also thank you for she sent me a million messages during, like, right after I got off. She watched it, so she was like, this was great, this was great, this was great. So it was like actually, Michelle, it was like you were with me. So
yeah I know she gave you, man, she's a big time supporter, man. I tell you, it was awesome to see how much support she was giving you for that, man.
Yeah, no, she was fantastic.
Man, I tell you right now, you had that opportunity. I mean, that's a huge deal to be able to perform a Dry Bar, ladies and gentlemen. He did this October 23rd, live recording in Provo, Utah, Brian Kohatsu, and very popular clean comedy platform. Tell us a little bit about how everything went down, Brian.
So I actually, I'd been wanting to do Dry Bar, but it was one of the things where I thought, and I hear this from a lot of people, they want to wait till they're ready.
Right,
which is important. I think that's important. I was kind of in the similar scenario.
Hey, Rhonda.
I got my start on Rhonda's show, and then my career is blown up, and now I got Dry Bar. That's the real story. But anyway, but no, I did a show, and somebody that was affiliated with Dry Bar that could get me on actually said, "Hey, I heard good things. Do you want to do it?" And so, yes. Now the interesting part is, I got sent my contract to do Dry Bar on, I believe it was March 13th. And I signed my contract and I sent it off. And then on March 14th, I got an email that said everything's canceled. So it was short-lived, and I thought, oh, well, okay. It was good while it lasted. So and then because April 11th, I was supposed to actually do the original. But then they sometime, I believe it was late August, they reached out and said, hey, we're gonna fire back up, and do you want in? And I said, I'm super rusty, so if you can push it off a little bit and let me get some time to get back on stage. And luckily it worked out. Phoenix market opened back up, and I was able to I called in every favor I had known to man, and and then God stepped in, and my new best friend Chris Wineland got a hold of me. He did Dry Bar the week before me.
Yes.
And we had connected on Rhonda Corey's show. Thank you, Rhonda, again. Connected us because he's from Arizona, and he had scheduled shows and I had scheduled shows. And I said, why don't we work together? And I put him on my shows. He put me on his. So I ended up with about 15 shows, 15 opportunities to run my set all the way through prior to leaving. So it was great because I was super rusty.
Okay.
And we'll get into why I'm super rusty later, I'm sure. But I don't write like normal people.
Well, one of the questions that I had for you before we came on was, about the social distancing part. This is our social distance model.
There you go.
Michelle Van Duzen. Thank you. I love that photo of you representing Rhonda Corey's Talk is Cheap show. Social distancing is a problem right now for comedy shows. How was that aspect for you at the Provo, Utah show?
So when you watch Dry Bar, everybody sees that audience, and they're just like, everything centers around Rhonda Corey. I'm starting to believe that. I think that's true. So when you go to Dry Bar, though, I mean, when you watch it online and everything, it's a packed house. It's about 200 people or so. So with the social distance, they're not allowed to have more than 50 people in there right now. And what they've ended up doing, actually, if you have the picture, you can bring it up. It shows a little bit of the distancing and how they're doing it.
Okay.
But it's 50 people. And as you can kind of see, they brought in tables, which they don't normally have kind of down on the side there.
Yeah.
So they've got everybody spread out. I think they're supposed to keep the masks on, but they weren't. Some of them still kept them on. And but like in the balcony there's nobody in the balcony. So it's really just the floor. Ron. Look, Rhonda's not even here, and she's getting like all these. It's like she's getting all this free sponsorship going toward her. How she managed to get product placement with her mask on your show, Maurice? I have no idea. Look at that.
Well, just like Michelle
marketer.
said. Well, Brian, it's just like Michelle said. Everything centers around Rhonda Corey.
This is absolutely true. So this is pretty much the stage in the area. I got a couple shots here. I'm just gonna share with you. So
okay,
hang on. There we go. So that's this guy on stage. Very blurry. I take really good pictures for comics all the time.
Yeah.
And when comics take pictures of me, they do a horrible job. You would not believe what this looked like originally.
Okay.
Not good. Anyways, that's me on stage. So this is kind of the video village. This is where all the cameras come into.
Yeah.
So this is all the different angles of what's going on. So the second night, I stayed an extra night. And I kind of went in the back since my background is video.
Yeah.
Talking to the producer.
Wow, man, that is awesome. I love it.
So kind of that's the idea. So they got 5 different cameras coming in with the different angles, and then the audience shots, and then you can see kind of over on the right-hand side some of the lights there. So they've got one guy monitoring all the audio coming in. And stuff.
Sure.
So, but yeah, it's pretty it's a great setup that they got in there. I got to go around real quick. I'll share these tourist shots for you. I have friends who have moved to Utah. Anyway, they took me on. It's great. But look at this. Look at this shot. You know?
Oh, wow.
That's what I'm saying. So now compare that to the picture you saw of me on stage. See, I know how to take a picture. Insane.
Awesome stuff, man. I love it.
Look how beautiful that is. And now this is the day I left. I'm not kidding you. It snowed completely white out.
Oh my gosh.
You're talking like when I left Phoenix, it was 91 degrees, and then that's 30 right there. So,
oh my gosh, dude, it's just amazing.
I'm glad to be home where it's warm, but we're cooled down right now. I think we're only 70 for the high today.
Well, I was just telling Michelle Van Duzen earlier, I said the weather out there, dude, in the Midwest is so weird. I mean, you can go from hot to cold like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the Broncos were playing the other day. It was snowing out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Cause I think in the 3 days I was there, it was, the high was, I think it was 58 the first day, 65 the second. And then the day I left, it was all the way down to, snowing and flurries. So it was a good trip.
Absolutely amazing stuff, man.
And while I remember it at the moment, I just wanted to tell you that, Utah is its own. I jokingly said in my setup that they're basically they're Canada for Arizona, because they're different, they're weird, we don't understand them. But, I was walking to Dry Bar, and I was waiting to cross the street, and there was a public drinking fountain. And I realized you're in Utah. There was graffiti on the fountain, and the graffiti said "Eat dirt." So that's the idea of graffiti in Utah.
Hey, Brian, can you say it one more time? Your Wi-Fi dipped out just when you're about to say the graffiti deal.
Oh, it said "Eat dirt."
Okay.
Yeah. So pretty harsh language is what I'm saying for Utah. So
very, very harsh language, Brian. I'll tell you right now. By the way, when is the release date for the special?
Well, as everything in our life, due to pandemic, it's going to be a little bit longer than normal. So I believe at this point we're looking maybe June.
Okay.
June or July.
About June.
And I'm fine with June. June's a big month for me. My birthday, my wedding anniversary. What else? My everything's in June, Father's Day. So that would be fine. It'd be a great present to get my dry bar special out on my birthday. So, so June is what I'm kind of anticipating based on what they kind of said. So
Yes. Yes. Trash talking farmers,
Farmers.
Michelle says. Those dead gum trash talking farmers.
Uh-huh.
So awesome. Well, so we'll be looking for your special to drop around June. This COVID-19 stuff is kind of messed up, everybody's schedules, including Dry Bar, but I think that's an awesome deal for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Brian Kohatsu, comedian, on the Maurice Brown Show. Just did a live recording in Provo, Utah for Dry Bar, and that special will be dropping. We hope, we think, will be around about June probably, and so just check it out, Brian Kohatsu. Brian, the COVID-19. Thanks a lot, June. Glad to hear you're fine with June.
Always fine with June.
And the sun does come out in June, Michelle. You're
That's
right. So it's all good, 100%. So, I find your story very interesting, Brian, being that you were a director, not just a director, but an award-winning director for 20 years. And then all of a sudden you decided to get involved in stand-up comedy. Now, what motivated that move, Brian?
So it's a kind of a long story, but I'll make it really short. So I was always like the funny kid or whatever. I never thought of myself as that, but a lot of people said, "Oh, you're funny," whatever. And I started my business very early. Right after college, I started my production company. Okay. And my dad was the one who always was like, "You should do comedy. You should do comedy." And I just thought that's not an option, Dad. That doesn't seem right. Especially for, a Japanese father to be like, "You should do something silly," not like, "Hey, you do something to make a living." So I always just put it on the back burner thinking, yeah, whatever. But I had a friend of mine who was a producer, an independent producer, kind of like myself. And he got asked to do a radio show. He pulled me into the radio show as a co-host. And then from there, I ended up, after we did a year of that show, our other co-host, she and I spun off to our own show, which was on All Comedy Radio. Okay. Did that for about a year. And then when that all came to an end, I was looking for something creative to do, and kind of jumped into improv at that point, and just to try it. Did that for 2 years. And then my buddy Mike James was in the improv troupe with me and basically challenged me to let's do stand-up. And I said, "No, thank you." And long story short, there was a guy there trying it who was awful. And I thought, well, I can do this bad. So I gave it the old college try, and here we are. So my clients were always saying, "You should do comedy. You should do comedy." And I'm like, yeah, okay. Because I used to charge by the hour. So the more I kept them laughing, the longer we worked. So it's a scheme is what it is. It's just a money-making scheme.
Well, it's an interesting kind of stair-step process that led you to stand-up, because you mentioned you were doing improv. How long did you do improv before you ventured into stand-up comedy?
Yeah, I like to say my career is going in reverse. So everybody wants to do TV and movies, and I went, I'm waiting for vaudeville to come back. So I did improv for about 2.5 years before I jumped into doing stand-up. I tried stand-up once, between the radio and the improv. And that was basically just because I was friends with a lot of comics in the Valley, and they said, "Hey, do you want to host the show?" And sure. And they said, "You could do some jokes if you want to," and not good. So I never wanted to do it again. And then ended up kind of, once I got improv chops, to me, improv will teach you how to perform. Then going into stand-up's a little bit easier, because you don't have to worry about the performance so much. Now you can actually concentrate on your writing.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you because I find improv intimidating. Most people are like, well, stand-up is really intimidating. For me, I just don't. I can't imagine how you guys pull that stuff off. It's always amazing whenever I go to an improv show, and I have tons of respect for sketch comedy. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's there's rules to it. Whereas if you adhere by the rules, it does make it a little bit easier. But after you're doing it for a while, the rules will kind of drop off a little bit for certain people. It's really about the people you work with. So I have, 3 other guys that I do improv with, and we're really close friends. And so even when you're not together, you kind of know each other, how they think. So once you do get together to do improv, granted, the more you do it, you're more on fire. But when you haven't seen each other for a while, at least that friendship mentality of finishing each other's sentences kicks in. And that's what really makes it great. Cause it's like, I know what you're thinking on this. So I can kind of lead the scene maybe that way. You can add this. And so it's really, it's that teamwork thing. But like improv, the difference between improv and stand-up really comes to, you're working with other people and it's not about you. You're just trying to make your scene partner look good. In stand-up, it's all you. So it's the mentality is different. And a lot of people go from stand-up trying to do improv. They can't get off the, I'm the only one on stage now. And they have to share and make the others look better. So I always highly recommend taking an improv class. Like if you want to do stand-up, I always say do improv first, learn how to perform, understand how to give away to other performers that you're with, and then jump into stand-up, and then you'll have a different perspective, I think, and be a better, stronger performer overall.
Yeah. Well, and you have that safety net when you're doing improv. If you got 5, 6 other folks up there with you, so you're not going to fall down alone, and they're going to make sure that nobody falls, and so that's a safety net.
I've always said it's easier to bomb as a group than it is by yourself.
Is that right? Is that right? Really?
I think because you're like, it's not just me. There's something to sharing the embarrassment of the moment, versus just yourself trying to dig out of a hole, So, or you could just say, well, that wasn't me. No, but I'm just saying it. I think training in improv. So basically, it's the way improv works is you're set up via games. If it's short form, long form, you've got, it's obviously longer, but it's a series of scenes. But if a scene's not going well or a game's not going well, as soon as that scene's cut, you go on to the next thing. So your mentality is that's over. Let's go on to the next thing. For me, it still works in stand-up. If you got a joke that doesn't hit, go on to the next one. Don't package your set as one item. So like, oh no, I'm bombing. Just go, I didn't get him with that one. Let's get him with the next one. Okay, boom, the crowd's coming back up. Okay. But you're going to have those little 1 or 2 jokes maybe don't hit as hard, but don't freak out over it. Just go to the next one, So I think improv really strengthens that in you to not, oh no, I'm bombing, because then they know and they see it on you. And then at that point you're a wounded animal on stage and the audience is looking to, just like, next.
So did so you left after 20 years of directing and got into stand-up, improv, then stand-up, so did you ever have and this is for stand-up, did you ever have a crossroads experience like, like that, like the deal where the guy who made a deal with the devil, he decided, Robert Johnson, the jazz, the blues guy, he made a deal with the devil. That was his crossroad.
Sure.
Of course, obviously, Brian, you did not make a deal with the devil, but did you ever have one of those moments like, I don't know if I can do this anymore? Did you ever have a conflict like that?
So because, I came to it so late. So it was kind of a gradual getting into comedy kind of thing. And when it comes to, here's the thing about production too, though. I never really did walk away because, the world we live in now, like, well, look at us right now. We're live right now. I mean, the world is up to kind of where I was because nobody was doing production or anything at that point. So, so it's still obviously in my blood, and I still do a lot for a lot of people in terms of like helping with production. And I still have certain clients that I still, take care of during the course of the year.
Yes.
It's a struggle sometimes because I'd rather, actually in the last 4 years, prior to the pandemic and everything, I was really transitioning completely over to comedy with very little production.
Okay.
And again, I try to, it's 30 years I've been doing production, and I've got some very good clients that are good friends and just excellent people that I want to continue to help. So I still service them. And then every once in a while, but I do a lot of work for comics too. So I've really merged the two together. Well, this just did all my jokes hit. Sweet. All right. I'm going to quote you on that. But write my wife a note. Like, I'm funny.
Right.
My wife looks at me. You gonna do that one? Really? Right. So
well, they're normally our toughest critics, Brian.
yeah. I mean, my wife's eyes must hurt from all the rolling. It's just like over and over. Like, I always find it funny when my wife gets very excited about a joke and says, "Ooh," or maybe you could say this. I'm like, "Oh, now you're interested." Okay.
Well, my wife is always rearranging the jokes, and she's actually she gives pretty good advice. It's like, why don't you keep talking about that? That's right. Don't change subjects.
So, they're part audience, part coach. Yeah.
They're good coaching. I've benefited from listening. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you do have to take in consideration that they are, as an audience member, when they do. My wife doesn't watch. My wife, I try to keep it to once a year. I always tell her it's the same old thing. You don't have to listen. You don't have to go. And my kids are pretty good too. I mean, I look for input from them. I will say this: if my wife goes, no, usually the joke's okay. But if she thinks it's funny, then I know I got something for sure.
Well, you know what? I did a show not too long ago, and I'm going to tell you, my wife is a tough critic, dude. And she walked up to me and she said, "You know what? You were the funniest guy here tonight." And I went, I must have. I love that. That did so much for my integrity, dude, because she doesn't give free compliments.
At that point, you realize you don't have to do anything else for the rest of your life now.
I didn't have to do anything else after that. I had already conquered everything I ever wanted to conquer.
Like I'm in the highest mountain. I got the compliment from my wife. What more do I want?
I tend to listen to her advice, though. Usually she's right. Matter of fact, she writes just about half of my sets. The joke ideas I get, or half of them are from her. Mm-hmm. So, but no, you got to listen to the wife. I had one of my sons, my oldest son. I went to do a show, and I always bounce jokes off of the whole family,
Sure.
Before I get to a venue. And my son said, "Dad, I wouldn't tell that one." I went, "Huh." So when I got to the venue, I'm killing. I mean, the flash bulbs are going off, and as comedians, we push boundaries, Brian. We can't help ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I said, if I tell this joke and it falls off the table, they'll forgive me. They're loving me.
Right.
And I pull the trigger and I bombed. I should have listened to my son.
They know something.
So there's great benefit in listening to the family. They usually know what we need to do.
Of course, my wife, I know you don't know much about my story, but my wife, I talk about her in my set quite a bit. My wife's a professional golfer, and but she didn't start golfing until after we got married. So she was 23 years old. She's a super athlete. So she became pro in about a year. She played college basketball. So she's an amazing athlete. She's an amazing athlete. So when she starts to coach me in comedy, I'm like, okay, settle down. You're not good at everything, but she knows what she's talking about. So she's a tough coach. So,
oh my gosh, man, Rhonda, you guys have some serious power, and if we listen more often, we would probably benefit, which has helped my comedy career out quite tremendously. Let me ask you something, Brian.
Sure.
What is the biggest lesson that you have learned since you've been doing stand-up comedy that has made you a better comedian?
So I coach. I don't coach. My wife's the big coach, not me. I teach improv.
Okay.
So it's funny. I'll teach improv, but I won't teach stand-up. My stand-up.
Whoa, that's interesting.
The way I write and things is different than I think most people, so I don't think it translates really. But if you can get started in improv, I think that's the key. But what I've learned is, and I see this because the club I'm affiliated with, I do record like the open mics and things. Yeah. And I see a lot of problems with a lot of young comics. And one thing is, and this is what I teach in my improv class, is confidence. Not overconfidence and not being cocky, but you got to be confident on stage. So once you're confident and you have that confidence, then your material, you got to be confident in your material and all that to perform it the way you need to perform it. Yeah. When you lack that confidence or you waver in any way, the audience picks up on it pretty quick. And if they
Yes.
say, this guy doesn't think that's funny, I don't
Exactly.
either, you know?
Exactly.
So if you don't at least have that confidence going up on stage now, and I'm sure you've seen this too, you see the guys who are way overconfident, but they got no material, you know?
Oh yeah, you see that as well. Yeah.
They strut the stage and, they're the peacock, and they're just
Yeah.
doing their thing. And you're like, this is great. He's very charismatic, but there's no jokes here. What's going on?
Right.
You see a lot of that. And then you see guys with like incredible material that don't sell it because they don't know how to perform, or they're self-conscious of what's going on. And those are the guys you're like, oh my gosh, you'd be so great if you could just be confident. You've got good jokes, know it.
Yeah.
So I think confidence is the thing, and writing that fine line between being overconfident and cocky. Just go, I'm good. I know what I'm going to do. Like for me, for Dry Bar, I was like, you've been here before a million times on stage. Just, what you're doing. Just go do it, So,
yeah, well, Brian, I've learned over the years as well, the confidence factor is huge, man. I mean, you get up there, and I've found that because what happens because of the lack of confidence, you find yourself kind of back on your heels, and that brings out the hecklers.
Yep.
And it all kind of bad things happen when you're back on your heels. So you've got to be quote unquote leaning forward. Meaning you're fully confident in what you're doing, and that's not being a cocky or being a jerk. It's like, okay, take ownership of your material with no regrets, and bring it. You know what I mean? Just get in there, get into that zone, and be comfortable in, I guess, what we would call uncomfortable, because we don't like getting out of the shell. When you force yourself to come forward, then everything kind of just clicks. You just whoever you are comes out when you make the decision, I'm going to let it rip.
Yeah, you can be yourself on stage and be your confident self. The other thing too is, you've got to, as a comic, you've got to own the room when you get up there.
You have to.
You have to have the confidence of owning the room, saying, okay, it's my time now. Listen up. Here we go.
There you go.
Do you remember the movie The Informant with Matt Damon?
Wow, man. I don't think I have seen that film.
So here's the interesting thing about that movie. So Matt Damon it's based on a true story about this guy who is, it's a comedy, but he's kind of inside information. And he's saying that these guys are kind of price fixing in this industry and that. So what they did was, because it's this kind of corporate world, they put comics in the roles of all the executives in this business. And the reason they did it is because Steven Soderbergh, I believe, is the director. He said comics own the room from the minute they walk in the room. And he goes, and I needed all these guys in this movie to be corporate guys who go in and own the room. So they've got all these great comics who were billed as all the executives. And it works because the minute they walk in, they have an air and presence about them that they're important and they should be there in the room before they even open their mouth. So it was really interesting. So there's a lot of old time comics in this movie. You should check it out. It's very good. It's a weird movie.
I would love to check it out. Speaking of old time comics, one of my favorite old time guys who passed recently, a legend in comedy, Don Rickles.
Yeah.
Don Rickles is one of the most intriguing comedians I've ever seen, in that he's a mean guy, but he doesn't necessarily make you mad. He's saying all these negative things, but you can feel that he doesn't mean it. And he's
lovable. He's a lovable mean guy. It's funny you say that. I just watched, I think it was a couple days ago, when he hosted Saturday Night Live and his monologue.
Yeah.
And that's a weird scenario to go out and start talking to the crowd and all that on SNL, but it was great. Like, even they were telling him to wrap it up, and he's like, "Who are you to tell me this?" Like, in the booth, he's yelling back at the booth and everything. It was really funny.
Well, Don said that he doesn't really write a routine. What he does is he has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So he knows those three things only when he goes out. But everything in between is just kind of like whatever comes to his mind. He did a show in Las Vegas where he loves to, any show he does, he'll insult someone's wife. He'll go, "Is that your wife?" And the guy goes, yes. My wife goes, oh, he'll do one of those numbers, right? And so he did that in Vegas one night, and a lot of times he was performing in front of mafioso guys. So the guy knocks on his door, and he sees the dude at the dressing room door, and Don's like, okay, it finally caught up to me. Today I pay the price. And the guy's like, Donnie, I just wanted to tell you, I think you're hilarious. Can I get your autograph? So that is an example of a guy that could attack you, but yet at the same time, he never offended anyone.
Right. Because you knew kind of where he was coming from. This is entertainment, and we're all going to have a big laugh on it at everyone's expense, at the end of it. And then, we were entertained, and then you move on with the rest of your life,
And pretty much, Let me ask you this, Brian, how long did it take you to find a groove, a rhythm, long story short, your voice in comedy? How long did that take?
That's a really good question. I think I felt like the beginning of this year, I was really starting to feel my stride of finding my voice. I think I've been, in the cycle of like getting very comfortable on stage and the rest of it. But I think I'm almost there with finding my full voice, to where I'm at, what I'm about, and how I present, and what the things I want to talk about. So, that's a tough one though. I think, a lot of people find it very quickly. I think some people always look for it. My set's a little bit all over the place. So,
hey, Kenya, thanks for watching, my friend, Mr. Wakisa, all the way from Kenya. Thanks a lot, man. I'll be honest with you. For me, and I'm kind of on the same slant upward as yourself. In February, I was in Miami, and actually 2019, I was really starting to hit a real good stride.
Yeah.
And I was in Miami in February of this year, and I did 8 straight nights out there. All were really good except one night, my last night there, because I encountered, I would call it a quasi heckler, because this girl, I was telling Michelle on the earlier show, she was a long ball hitter on the LPGA tour, and she was just ripped, dude. And she started heckling every comic. And when hecklers come in, the comedians, we all kind of look at each other like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And, some comedians live to destroy a heckler, but we're all nice guys. We don't want to do that. Right. So when I got on stage, they had already escorted her out. And I'm like, And so as soon as I started in, here she comes stomping back in the door. And I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. And so there was a girl at the bar that tried to defend me. So now these two are about to get into a fist fight right in front of me. And I'm like, oh man, I had never seen that before. And needless to say, I bombed, dude, because I tried to ignore the elephant in the room.
Right.
But I learned you can never ignore the elephant in the room. You've got to address it. You can't avoid it. You got to address it. And I tried to, and I just bombed. But when you have those experiences, just learn from it and go, okay, next time I'll deal with it this way or whatever way.
That's exactly it. File it away and figure it out for another day when you come across it again. Yeah.
And well, speaking of that, what is your worst bombing experience, Brian?
So obviously there were many early on. The most interesting one I can say that I learned a valuable lesson from was, and we're going to get dark here for a second.
It's all good, Brian.
So my brother had passed away 3 years ago. Okay. And obviously my parents had passed away a few years before that. So it was a few heavy years there going on, but when my brother passed, it was very unexpected. So, so it was about a month or so after he had passed, and I was doing a show and just trying to get pretty much numb at this point. I don't know if I should have been doing shows, but it was therapeutic in a way to just keep my mind off of it. So anyways, my home club at the time, the owner there often liked to go up and do crowd work. And he would do that if the crowd was a little dead to try to get it all worked up. And he'd done this several times in the past and seen it done, and he does get them riled up. And then when I would go out and follow him, typically, it's a pretty big follow because he's got everybody worked up. So I would try to match his energy. I made fun of him a little bit because he was making fun of the audience. And then I win the audience over to me because now I'm like the protector of the audience. And then they liked me. And then we could kind of go back into my set with no problem.
Right.
Anyway, this was going on. That happened. And I was not myself because I was kind of thinking about not so much my brother, but just out of my element. I wasn't in the room. I wasn't aware of what was happening, but I was literally sitting in the room. And I was just sitting there watching him do it. And I went up on stage and I just started doing my set. And it was tanking quickly. And I realized, oh, I didn't do what I normally do, which is try to match what was going on, address the feeling and the attitude of the room and all that. And I was eating it bad. I mean, first show didn't have a problem. It was, good show. Second show, it's just bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's getting worse. It's getting worse. And something clicked in me. And I just said, I even said to the audience, this isn't going well. I know, just hold on. And then it kind of clicked. And then I kind of started working. I started working the jokes like I normally do. A little bit of enthusiasm came back.
Yeah.
And by the closer, they were clapping. And I said, there you are. I finally showed up,
Man.
And it made me realize that, what you gotta be clear-headed and you gotta realize you're a performer and you're an entertainer. Go out, do your thing. But the not giving up aspect is the more important thing. There was just like, don't let this get you down. Just keep working, get him on the next one. It's kind of like that earlier talking, that joke didn't get him, go to the next one, go to the next one.
Yeah.
So, but they weren't in the mood for that guy I brought up on stage after what they had just seen.
Wow.
That's all on me. I didn't bring it. So, it ended well. But
Amen. Amen. Praise the Lord for that.
They got the last 3 jokes were apparently good enough to them not to throw
to leave with a little bit of dignity.
The tip of the hat. Thank you very much. You want to just leave going, I'm a competent comic.
Well,
if you were here earlier, I was here.
Well, the main thing is, Brian, you learned something from it and you put it on yourself. You didn't blame the audience.
Oh, no.
You knew that it was on you. And hey, look, I got to eat this and I got to figure out how to dig out of this situation. Are you someone that when this happens, because it inevitably happens to every comic and it happens, it's just part of this business. But when it happens to you, are you able to kind of brush it off immediately, or does it take you a couple of days to get over?
Depends on the scenario, but usually, like with everybody, you get off stage and you go, what's the deal with, like, you know what I mean? It's always, what was the deal with the lady in the front, Yeah.
Yeah.
That double talk that goes on in your head while you're on. Here's the funny thing. When I used to do improv all the time, sometimes we'd have 12 people on stage and you'd stand on the wings in between games sometimes, and somebody would go, what's the deal with this guy in the front? He hasn't laughed at anything. And all I could think of was like, I'm concentrating on the show. I don't know why you're bothered with one person. You got a room of 100 people. You're going to worry about one not laughing.
Exactly.
So, that mentality going into stand-up, I try to brush it off because I'm very aware of that one person kind of thing is just like, it's not enough. If it ruined the whole set for the whole room, that upsets me, because it's always like, why couldn't we have done more? Or that person was just trouble that you couldn't get them to shut up or stuff.
100%.
Yeah, it's I mean, then you start learning the tricks of talking louder on the mic or whatever, and trying to get them to shut up in some way. I don't see too much of that problem, just as much as I used to. Not saying I'm better at handling it or anything else, but I just think, I don't let it bug me too much. I just kind of, it's funny. I was working with Bob Zaney one day, and I said, how was the last weekend? He goes, Brian, that was yesterday. We're on to the next one. And it just made me think, you're right. You can't go back. You can't fix any set after it's done. You just got to learn from it,
Yeah. Well, Kevin Scott Collier says an audience has to keep humanity in mind. The comic is a person, and you never know what crisis is weighing on their heart or their mind, and before they stepped up there. And here's the reality, and I think this as well as I do. And Kevin Scott Collier, great comment. The audience needs to know that. Here's the problem in the midst of that great statement you made. They don't care. I mean, the audience, dude, they don't care. It's like taming lions up there. I think that stand-up comedy is the purest art form that exists in entertainment. because what you have to pull off, the feat that a comic has to pull off is absolutely amazing, because you're making a room full of people you don't know, you probably wouldn't talk to in front of a Walmart if you didn't have to. But now for the next 30 minutes, we're going to be buds.
Right.
We are going to be buddies. And by the way that I may feel about them, they feel the same way about me. But now we're going to be buddies. And you have to figure that out. And they don't care. An audience can be really, really, really brutal. But once you get that first laugh, because when you come out there, like, I'm a storyteller.
Yep.
And so when I come out, I know I have to go boom, boom.
Boom,
First
boom.
couple of jokes got to hit. I gotta get laughs right off the rip. So Brian, I can get their permission to tell a story.
Yeah. It's
They're
like,
I
saying,
like you.
trust
And
me.
listen.
Trust me to listen to me that I'm going to give you a laugh. And on this next one, that's a little bit longer. I do the exact same thing. I'm more of a storyteller, but it's the beginning is boom, 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 boom. And then it's boom, boom, boom. And now right now you've got the grace to say, okay, this next one's going to be a little longer. Hang in there.
Exactly.
I promise I'll get back to boom, boom, boom in a minute, but just give me the, So yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah.
And they will give you that levity. I mean, once you get them right off the rip, a couple of good ones, and now they like you, and you have to get the audience to like you. Yeah. If they like you, they'll listen to just about anything you say. And of course, you want to make sure that your jokes are solid and your stories are solid, but you have to get their permission. And so that's what I've learned from it. Kevin says people treat used car salesmen peddling lemons better than stand-up comics. Yes, they do, Kevin.
Yes.
Unfortunately. But you gotta get them like, so sorry. And brother Wakisa from Kenya says, "See, sorry for your loss, Brian. It takes faith to carry on when you have to heal many through pain. Your comic and laughter heals," and it does. I mean, what we do is a medicine.
And I appreciate that. That is actually the interesting about actually saying that is, my brother was funny. He wasn't a comic, but he was funny. So the majority of the memories I have with my brother is laughing.
Yeah.
And that's what keeps you going. My parents, my dad passed away first. My dad's a very big part of my set. My closing is all about my father, and lots of laughs. My mother, lots of laughs. I mean, that's what I remember the most about them is the laughs. So even as a comic, you're talking about whatever we do going up on stage and whatever we're coming on stage with in our head. Audience the same way. They've got a loss or they're going through something.
Oh, and, same thing. Yeah,
they're looking for the escape to laugh and I do a boom chicka boom.
I was doing a show, Brian, dude, and I mean everybody, Yanni, I was doing well. I had the crowd going really well, but there was one guy you were talking about. Some people are kind of weird because we see everything up there.
Sure.
And this guy was giving me, dude, the death stare, Jack. And I'm going, what did I say that made this guy so upset?
Right.
I mean, everybody's having a good time, but this guy, he looked like he wanted to kill me. Okay. And I think I was making some, ethnic jokes, and they weren't mean. I was just comparing blacks, whites, and how we're different. And it was funny. And it was, I thought it was fairly harmless. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to focus on this guy.
Right.
I'm not going to look at him again because everybody was having a good time. Why would I worry about him?
Yeah.
And the only thing I was worried about is, am I going to make it to my car safely? But which nothing ever happened. But I just said that to say, focus on the people that are having a good time.
Right. And again, you don't know what happened. Maybe something happened at home or something happened at work or something, but he decided he was still going to go out for an evening.
Yeah.
It's just, here's a great example. We had, back in the improv days, we had a gentleman who would show up every week, and he would sit in the front row with his legs crossed, and he would just sit there.
Okay.
The whole show.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, what is the deal with the guy in the front? I'm like, I don't know, but stop concentrating on him or else you're going to just only concentrate on the guy not laughing.
Yes, of course.
And about a month went by, and one of us finally said, hey, we noticed you're at the show every week. Thanks for coming. And he says, oh, and he was French. Oh,
Okay.
thank you very much. I very much enjoy the show. We're like, okay. He did. He says it's very funny, very entertaining. I enjoy it,
Yeah.
but he just didn't. He wasn't an audible laugher. And
Yeah.
then he was an engineer, and he was basically working out here. And about a month later, his family came out, and they were staying with him. So then he was bringing his wife and daughter, and then they sat in the front row, and they were laughing and having a great time. And it was like, if you worried about that guy so much, you would have just assumed it was terrible, and you could let it affect your,
Your whole set.
right. And then it's the opposite. This guy's having a great time. He's enjoying it, So, don't be afraid even to approach those people after the show and say, "Hey, did you have a good time?"
Yeah.
And maybe they'll go, "Yeah, this is exactly what I needed. I just, I have a facial paralysis and I can't laugh or something." I don't know. Who knows what's going on,
So Michelle Van Duzen has a question for you. She wants to know how long you work on a joke until it feels stage ready.
Right. Well, first of all, Michelle, I'm sharing a lot of personal information, and that's a little too personal. So, no.
Right.
I don't talk about my comedy, Michelle. That's a great question. Stage ready. Well, for instance, for Dry Bar, I had a new joke that I was running about my daughter.
Okay.
And, I'm about a month and a half out. And for some reason, most people would say you're an idiot for trying a brand new joke going into Dry Bar. But I felt confident enough about it, and I ran it. I ran it at home several times to the family. I ran it to my comic friends several times. Feel like it was getting there, and then over the course of those 15 shows, I ran it with tinkering with it.
Okay.
To the point where I finally felt I think it's good. So like I would say maybe I had 2 shows left where I ran it the way I was going to run it. And I told myself, if it doesn't go like I think, I'm not going to do it for Dry Bar. So,
Okay.
it seemed to go well, and I thought, okay. And I did it at Dry Bar, and it did well. It did very well. So,
praise the Lord for that. That's good.
So I would say, I don't know, because I'll tell you, I know that joke even now a year is going to look completely different and probably be better.
Well, if I may interject, I think what you have to get on stage and fail several times until it's ready. That's the only way you're going to know if some stage ready. But I'll give you an interesting take on that, this subject, and it's from a guy who's arguably the best comedian of all time. You can argue Richard Pryor and a lot of people. I mean, myself personally, I would say Richard Pryor is the funniest guy I've ever seen. However, this guy, for me, is a close second. And in some people's minds, he's the best ever. It's George Carlin. George Carlin said, "I don't believe," this was an amazing statement that he made. And sometimes I try to adopt it based on what you just said a moment ago about, you know what? I feel confident enough in this joke. I just feel this joke, and I'm just going to do it anyway. And it did work. Yeah. George Carlin's entire approach was to write a 60-minute set, and to the point where it fit his liking.
Yeah.
George Carlin he didn't test it. He didn't go to open mics. He just wrote, said, "I like that."
Yeah.
And then he'd go out and kill. And that is so typical of what we do as comics today.
Because what's strange is the confidence is there. The confidence is, I like this. And it's almost, I like this for me.
Yeah.
Whether or not the audience, I don't know, but I like it. And if you're confident enough in who you are, people like confident people. Nobody hangs out with wishy-washy people.
No.
So you go up there and you're like, this is my opinion. You're gonna hit and miss, but at least they're gonna respect you going.
Well, you know what that does? It speaks to the fact, Brian, that you have to believe in you. And if it's funny to you, by gosh, I'm going to express my truth. Yep. And the audience wants to hear it. They don't want you to tell them what their truth is. Yeah. They want to know, what is your truth?
Yeah.
And so George Carlin operated that way. I still believe, in going out there to the stage and testing it and adjusting and all those type of things. Sure. But I do take something from that approach as well. Like, wow. Yeah. And I'm putting some jokes out nowadays, not all, but some that I just love that. I'm just going to tell it.
Yeah.
But
Well,
so yeah, man, I that was a great question, Michelle.
there's one of those things too where all comics have that. This is a joke for me because I like it and I think it's funny. Whether
Yeah.
and you tell it anyways, even if nobody laughs. I have one that in my set right now that I do all the time, and several of my friends have said I don't get it, but the people that get it, those are the ones who come up to me after the show and said, "Man, I thought that joke was just for me. Thank you so." No, and they're laughing so hard, but it might be 2 people out of 50, 75 people, and you're just like, well, they really liked it. I like the joke, but does it kill the momentum? A little bit, but it shows your personality, I think, too. Sometimes people just laugh because they like you, and even if they don't get the joke, they'll come up to you afterwards. What was that one? I didn't get it.
Oh, absolutely. But it always throws you up. There are people that will sit there, dude, and they will not laugh for anything. And I, like you, went up to a guy. I actually didn't even go up to him for that reason. I just said, hey, man, did you have a good time tonight? Obvious to me, he did not have a good time. And he said, I loved it. And he was genuine. I mean, the guy just said, I loved it, man. You were great. You were really entertaining. Thank you so much. And I went, okay. Thank you.
Right.
and
my night confusing.
Some people don't laugh, man. They just, there are people out there like that enjoy what you're doing tremendously. Their facial expressions, they don't change.
Here's something interesting. I just somebody coming, I was talking to another comic and he kind of made me privy to this little thing. But a few years back, I was doing a club here in Arizona, which is Canadian owned. And we were doing the show. It was comedian Rob Little, myself, and Brent Terhune. And the audience was it was one of those nights where you're doing your jokes, they're laughing, but it just feels like you're pulling constantly for the joke. Yes, it's sponsored by Mountain Dew Zero, by the way. Anyway, thanks. Hopefully I'll get a sponsorship out of this. Anyway, but you're pulling the jokes. You're trying to pull all night long to get the laughs,
Yeah.
But every comic, we all felt the same thing. Like, oh my gosh, it's like pulling to get these people to laugh. Well, Rob's up there and Rob's doing his bit like he normally is. Same thing. They're kind of laughing, but you could tell too. I mean, I know Rob really well and he's kind of pulling. And then Rob says, good night. And then standing ovation. And he turns to me and he goes, like, where did that come from?
Amazing.
And then as everyone's rifling out, they're like, that was the best show we've seen here. And we're like, could have fooled us. I mean, but everybody was like, that was great. But what I was told is Arizona we get, a lot of snowbirds from all over the country, but we get a ton of Canadians. And somebody told me the Canadians don't necessarily laugh the same way we do. They're a little bit more reserved. Possibly not all. I don't want to generalize Canadians, but in that particular area, it's a little bit more financially up. So a lot of them are just sitting there cross-legged with their champagne or their wine. Sip, and then like, very good. Like, you're very entertaining.
I've heard that there are some audiences in Europe that are kind of like that. They don't really show a lot of expressions or anything. But when you're done, they thought you were marvelous and they loved it. And it's kind of like, I guess they're kind of looking at it as a performance or a theatrical presentation, like they need to just watch and so I don't know. But Bill Burr said he was in Austria once and he said they actually tried to help him with the jokes, with his problem. They were like, well, why don't you just say you're sorry?
If you would have apologized more during your set.
Have you? So you obviously you were in Canada, so you've been out of the country. I was going to ask you if
Canadians here. That was Canadians here. I have not.
Okay,
gotcha. Yeah, I've not yet ventured to Canada but I'm ready for them.
Yeah, I would love to go up there. Do you know Leland Klassen?
Actually, Leland was just in Phoenix a few weeks ago, so I got to see him very, very briefly. We've met a couple times, but He was down. Yeah, Leland's great.
Leland is great. He's hilarious. He's a Canadian guy, and his humor. And he's got his acts. It's very clear that he's Canadian, but he's really fun. Matter of fact, Canadians are just plain funny. I don't know if you ever watched SCTV back in the day with, Rick Moranis and Eugene Levy and those guys,
Martin
John
Short.
Candy, Andrea Martin. Man, they were hilarious. I love that show. That show.
It's great.
Just a program reminder, everybody, we've got coming up, and I don't know if you've ever seen this show or not. It's called Vindication on PureFlix. It's a crime, faith-based crime drama, and Venus Monique and Todd Terry, the lead actors on that series, are going to be on the show next week, November 2nd, a Monday at 3 p.m. Venus Monique, and at 3 p.m. Tuesday, Todd Terry. Have you ever seen that show?
I have not.
You got to check it out, dude. It is awesome. It's one of the things that makes it difficult, and I think being a comedian, you could probably relate to this, but I think that, and when we do stuff, Sleeper Agent, definitely check him out on PureFlix, Leland Clausen and Sleeper Agent. But I think what happens with a lot of faith-based works, it's hard to deliver a message and not be cheesy and hokey because we're trying so hard to be clean.
Right.
And, as a comic, we understand that's a recipe for disaster if you're hokey and cheesy. You're up here, you're clean, still got to be authentic. So I said all that to say this. That particular show is as authentic, it's gritty, it's substantive. It's like, okay, that stuff really happens.
Yeah.
And they come up right up to the line of inappropriateness, if you want to call it that, but they never get there.
Yeah.
So it draws the attention of any viewer. And the thing is, it's leading you to light. Whereas if I watched NCIS, and there's nothing against NCIS or Blue Bloods or any of these other shows, when you get finished watching those shows, you want to go jump off a building. I'm just kidding.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, Brian, it's a very uplifting show.
I think we need an intervention right about now. Stop watching those shows, Maurice. Your life will be so much better if you just cut it out.
Yeah, I need to cut it out. But man, this has been a great convo, Brian. I've enjoyed the conversation tremendously, man.
I enjoyed it.
There's so much more I want. It's kind of like Michelle. I didn't get to. Our conversation was so robust. I didn't really get a chance to ask you everything that I wanted to. But I got to have you on the show again at another time.
I would love to come back. Yeah, this was fun.
Absolutely tremendous stuff. Can you share with everyone before we skip out how they can how fans can follow you on social media or contact you for booking?
Easily, if my name is there on screen and you've got it below there. So if you go to briankohatsu.com, all my links to all my social media are on there, and you can book me from there too, and all the other good stuff. So there's a lot of stuff on there to look.
Thank you, June. I did have two great guests today. I mean, you can't ask for too much better than Michelle Van Duzen and then Brian Kohatsu to follow her up. I mean, this has been a great show, and this can be seen on Roku TV later this evening on the Creative Motion Network, everybody. So if you came in late, you want to see the whole show, you can see it tonight on Roku TV. Brian Kohatsu just did a Dry Bar comedy special, live recording this past Friday in Provo, Utah, and we expect that to drop in June, sometime this summer. Correct, Brian?
Yep. That is my belief. I'm holding out. I'm holding out for my birthday. That's what I'm holding out for. June 17th. That's what I'm hoping.
Okay, well,
we'll just call it June 17th. Go and look and see. We'll make sure. If not, I'll just tell you what it was about. We'll do a Facebook Live. I'll just redo it for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the very funny Brian Kohatsu. Brian, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
I appreciate it.
May the peace of Christ be with you and your family, bro.
I appreciate that. Same to you too. Thanks.